The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Well, this description works on two levels, because there's the concrete level, where there is, in the story, the house in the forest, and the forest is the place of danger and the unknown. Danger, possibility, and the unknown. And so that's really the structure of the world, a stable, secure center. That's the house, or in principle secure, although in this case it's inhabited by, evil stepmother. The home surrounded by the unknown. And the children are taken out into the unknown by the acts of their parents, but metaphysically they're abandoned to the unknown because their parents do not provide them with the security that is appropriate from the moral perspective with regard to parental conduct. So children who are the target of malevolent envy and jealousy, even murderous, on the part of their parents, motivated by exceptionally selfish reasons, justified by reference to self-induced poverty, do find themselves abandoned in the unknown, right? They're parentless children. The woman led the children still deeper into the forest, where they had never in their lives been before. Then a great fire was again made. That's another sense of false security. And the mother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you are tired, you may sleep a little. She's so wonderful. We are going into the forest to cut wood, and in the evening, when we are done, we will come and fetch you away." When it was noon, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel, who had scattered his by the way. And so Gretel is also part of a reciprocal and reciprocally altruistic duo. You could imagine a scenario where she had secretly skittered off to eat her lone piece of bread by herself, leaving her brother with nothing. But despite their privation, they prioritize sharing, and that makes them a unit with two minds, let's say. And as such a cooperative unit, they're able to deal with the unknown circumstances that present themselves to them much more effectively. That sharing hospitality is the sacrifice of momentary benefit for the advantage of long-term communion, play, communication, strategy, and mutual support. And that is the foundation of community. Sacrifice as foundation of community. And Hansel and Gretel understand this. Then they fell asleep, and evening came and went, but no one came to the poor children. They did not awake until it was dark night. And Hansel comforted his little sister and said, "Just wait, Gretel, until the moon rises, and then we shall see the crumbs of bread, which I have strewn about, and they will show us our way home." When the moon came, they set out, but they found no crumbs, for the many thousands of birds which fly about in the woods and fields had picked them all up. So Hansel is stymied this time in his attempt to circumvent the machinations of his evil stepmother and his weak father. Reference to the limits of his childhood strategizing. Hansel said to Gretel, "We shall soon find the way." But they did not find it. They walked the whole night and all the next day too, from morning till evening, but they did not get out of the forest and were very hungry, for they had nothing to eat but 2 or 3 berries which grew on the ground. And as they were so weary that their legs would carry them no longer, they lay down beneath a tree and fell asleep. So they've come to the end of their own devices, and they've been abandoned and betrayed by their parents, and so that places them even deeper in the woods, as we find out in the next paragraph. It was now 3 mornings since they had left their father's house. They began to walk again, but they always got deeper into the forest, and if help did not come soon, they must die of hunger and weariness. When it was midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a bough, which sang so delightfully that they stood still and listened to it. And when it had finished its song, it spread its wings and flew away before them, and they followed it until they reached a little house, on the roof of which it alighted. And so the evil witch, who we'll encounter soon, sends out a attractive and welcoming avatar, familiar, you might say, to attract the children. And so this is the third time in the story where we see the facade of beauty and attractiveness, the white bird and its attractive song, serving as the camouflage that hides something much, much darker and more malevolent. So this whole story is a warning about vice presenting itself as virtue. And the bird is a representation of that. The children are attracted by something that's beautiful and apparently welcoming, and it entices them in their desperation into the evil witch's lair. Now, that motif of the positive being used as camouflage for the negative is immediately represented in the form of the house itself. They followed the bird until they reached a little house on the roof of which it alighted. And when they came quite up to the little house, they saw that it was built out of bread and covered with cakes, and that the windows were of clear sugar. "We will set to work on that," said Hansel, "and have a good meal. I'll eat a bit of the roof, and thou, Gretel, can eat some of the window. It will taste sweet." Hansel reached up above and broke off a little of the roof to try how it tasted, and Gretel leant against the window and nibbled at the panes. Then a soft voice cried from the room. Okay, so what might we conclude at this point? This looks a little too good to be true. So you have children who are lost in the wilderness in consequence of their parents' maliciousness and weakness and malevolence, and they are as deep into the woods as they possibly can get, which means that they're in real trouble. And a beautiful bird appears and leads them not only to a house, but a house that's literally made out of candy. And so that all screams too good to be true. And it's a warning to everyone, children included, that it's often necessary to look behind the facade, especially in a circumstance where things do seem to be too good to be true. Then a soft voice cried from the room, "Nibble, nibble, gnaw. Who is nibbling at my little house?" The children answered, the wind, the heaven-born wind," and went out eating without disturbing themselves. Hansel, who thought the roof tasted very nice, tore down a great piece of it, and Gretel pushed out the whole of one round window pane, sat down and enjoyed herself with it. Suddenly the door opened, and a very, very old woman who supported herself on crutches came creeping out. Hansel and Gretel were so terribly frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands. The old woman, however, nodded her head and said, "Oh, you dear children, who has brought you here? Do come in and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." She took them both by the hand and led them into her little house. Then good food was set before them, milk and pancakes and sugar, apples and nuts. Afterwards, 2 pretty little beds were covered with clean white linen, and Hansel and Gretel lay down in them and thought they were in heaven. There's a deep motif here of, as I alluded to earlier, of the pathologies of camouflaged virtue signaling. So children are very dependent, and they're dependent primarily on maternal benevolence. And what that means is that maternal benevolence can be gamed by pathological actors who can accrue to themselves all of the reputational virtue of the positive mother. You can think about this politically as well. The maternal force that cares for everything, and including the planet and everything on it, but in reality is doing nothing but serving its own malicious and carnivorous or even cannibalistic urges. It's a very dark story. And so the worst evil takes the greatest good and perverts it to the worst possible end. And that's what we see happening here. The old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was in reality a wicked witch who lay in wait for children and had only built the little house of bread in